Hi, everyone. It's Rick Lawrence, Executive Director of Vibrant Faith, and Fred Oduyoye, the founder and chief maker of everything that happens for Reachable Reconciliation. So Fred and I are in the middle of our ongoing conversation about what makes for reachable reconciliation in a church environment, in the church culture, but also organizationally and individually. And Fred has a process that he uses called the 5 R's, which is a relational process, which is as he has practiced this process, it's led to actual reconciliation. That's what we really want, not more words. We want actual reconciliation happening. And the 5 R's, just as a reminder, stand for reaction, reflection, repairs, reaching, and relationship. And we thought today we would talk about a subtopic underneath repair. How do you make amends, apologize, or understand and own your own role in this situation, which I think is one of the most charged aspects of this entire process, because it means embracing the courage to own your own stuff. And I was telling Fred about something that just happened this morning. I wrote something on our Catalyst website that a person wrote back and was very offended. She said that she'd been stewing about it all weekend. I posted this on Friday. It's called The Lure of Cup Holders. And she had been stewing about it all over the weekend because the way I described the story in that post was offensive to her. And she was really bothered by it enough to send me a note. So she was bothered by the metaphors I used for Jesus. She was bothered by the way that I described my interactions with somebody in that story. And she was bothered by my takeaway from the story, which I said the takeaway was that other people kind of came up to me after this interchange and were just full of energy in their eyes, and it became almost like a worship time. She was bothered by that. She said what happened there wasn't worship. So she was bothered by a lot of things. And Fred, I told you, so the normal reaction is when you feel like somebody has taken you the wrong way, yeah, or has visited their own filters, sure, onto the story or something like that, your first reaction is defensive, like, that's not fair what you just said, especially that last thing you said. That was really not fair. So there's an initial reaction, and then you're on the precipice. You have to choose how you're going to react. So could you take it from there? Like, you're on the precipice. What do you do on the precipice then?
Sure. And as we've talked about before, reactions are normal. That's just what we do as humans. But the key is when we move into that reflection time, how much of that reflection do we really take inventory of ourselves, right? How much of it do we own in the situation and kind of have some self-reflection, like, all right, now that I'm settled down, let's take a look outside of myself. Let's figure out what the trigger was. Let's take a look outside of myself, right? And so even if your reaction wasn't anything, right, that's still a reaction. And so, then there has to be a part where you got to say, I feel a little convicted as a person who cares about people, and I want them to know that I value who you are. Maybe there's some information that I'm missing, right? Maybe there's, something that I don't know as to why I've offended or hurt you. And I need to learn what that is. And even if I don't quite understand what it is, the fact that I know that it hurt you is important to me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, Fred. When somebody, because I think this is a common situation where somebody says or does something that creates division and conflict, and you're thinking in your head, that was unfair. What they just said was unfair. It's not an accurate critique of who I really am. And so owning my role in it seems very difficult if the thing that you're owning seems unfair to you.
Sure.
So how do you address that?
Well, see, but you're going to be able, there should be some way that you gauge that you've offended that person, whether there's a verbal response, whether you know, there's something on their face that shows it, right? Something about their countenance that shows, oh wow, their reaction to my reaction is, that's not right. Just like in your story, like, you know, this person has kind of responded back like, you know, I'm not real settled with that. And so now what you want to do is, the hardest thing for us to do in repairing is to apologize. We don't want to do that. Like, we want to go around it by, you know, hey, here's a gift, here's a Starbucks card, you know, hey, let me take you out to eat, whatever it may be. But we don't want to say I'm sorry and to apologize. But then there's an action after the apology. You know, you can tell, because that's the part when people see that you care, when it's the words, but there's action after the words, right? Just like, you know, the gospel, right? Read the word, right? But we got to work out our salvation, right? And so there's a response after that that's required. And so how we respond in that determines how the relationship will be afterwards, which is really important. And so if we respond with a sensitivity that says, I want to repair, I'm sorry, here was my intentions, here were my thoughts, here's why I didn't do anything, but I want to make it right, can I, you know, and learn why it bothered them, is important. And then after that, even, you know, even during that process, it's pausing and saying, hey, am I responding well now? You know what I mean? Is, have I, so that way you're gauging, it's not all in your own intellect, because then you would still be yourself, all right? The learning takes place when you ask and say, hey, have I learned more now, right? So that I don't end up in the same scenario again, where I'm offending someone else once more.
That's so good. And that the thing is about that, that owning part, I know that when I'm interacting with someone who does what you just said, my deep and visceral experience of that person is that I'm talking to a person who's mature. And if the other response happens, I know inside I'm talking to a person who's immature.
Yeah.
But maturity, the maturity reaction is much more rare. When you experience someone responding the way that you just described, it really stands out. And it makes you feel like that this person has a weight to them because they were able to respond that way. And it's very disarming when the person responds that way as well, I think. The upshot of my story is I did wait and got, you know, tried to understand what I was reacting to. And then I responded to this person and said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the way I expressed myself impacted you that way. I should have expressed myself differently.
That's
and
good.
I did explain a little bit about why I used the metaphors I did, but I wasn't really trying to defend my choice of that. It's just, here's why I did that. But so we'll see. My experience with a lot of conflict is in division. Maybe you have experienced this too, Fred, is when somebody's delivering a lot of emotion your way, often it's a sideways thing. They've got other things going on in their life that triggered, and this is like an outlet. It's like a poking a hole in the pressure cooker, and a lot of that stuff comes through there. So I've learned over time that if I respond in the way that you're talking, it diffuses, it helps that person to recognize where all of their emotion was coming from. Does that make sense?
As long as we don't use that as a normalcy to say that's why someone's responded, because we don't automatically want to think that it is an indirect trigger because of all this other stuff they're going. It may literally be that situation that's impacting them for a very specific reason that is outside of our thought process, right?
Yep.
And so we don't want to minimize what may be important to someone else.
Absolutely. That is great PS at the end there. So for those of you who are watching this now, if you'd like to just take the first step, take your first little baby step in connecting with Fred around this 5R process in your organization or church culture, he can help be the catalyst for reconciliation and healing in your environment. He's an experienced person, as you've just seen, in guiding groups and individuals down this path. And the great thing I love about what you do, Fred, is that you're blunt in the way Jesus was blunt, in that you're always, your bluntness is always for the other's best good. And I think that's what really helps this process to lead to actual healing. So you can look at ways to engage Fred and take your first step toward talking to him about whatever your situation or challenge is right now. Just look below this video for ways to connect with Fred, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks, Rick.